Hello and welcome to the Blood Reds Transfer Daily. I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com writer Andrew Beasley, and today we're going to talk about some recent reports that have emerged about Michael Edwards possibly being wanted by Chelsea and Manchester United. I think the original report came from ESPN, and it's very interesting. After all, the former Liverpool sporting director is a free man; he can negotiate with any club at the moment, but perhaps Chelsea and Manchester United are a bit surprising, isn't it, Andrew?
Well, they're surprising in the sense that they are obviously rivals of
Yeah.
Liverpool's to varying degrees. But it's not surprising that any club really would want to try and hire Michael Edwards after the work he's done at Liverpool. I mean, I think most people would agree that Liverpool have probably had the most successful transfer record over the last, I don't know, maybe 5 seasons. It's hard to think of a signing that hasn't really worked out, or at worst hasn't. You can see the logic behind the signing and what they've tried to done. There's been no scattershot approach like a lot of clubs employ. It's been very much, who do we want? What can they bring to the team? Let's get them. We're not going to deviate from that. And Liverpool have sort of reaped the benefits of that. So, yeah, as I say, it's not a surprise that these clubs are interested in hiring him. Obviously, whether he would want to work for those clubs, be it through loyalty to Liverpool, which you'd imagine he has to some extent, or just the difficulty of it, to be completely honest. I mean, I think, sorting out Manchester United in their sort of current predicament is not going to be an easy job by any means, because of all the players they've got that need to shift, and obviously a new manager coming in, and who does he want, and things like this. So, and similarly, sort of Chelsea, perhaps not quite such a bad situation, but at the same time, there's a new ownership group. You don't know how that's going to go. They've clearly messed up with the Lukaku transfer. So there's a big job to be done there as well. So whether Edwards would want to take those on sort of remains to be seen. But clearly, with his reputation, I mean, he could have the pick of any club that he would like to go and work for, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, he described himself as a boyhood Liverpool fan, so it would be very interesting if he were to move to Manchester United, for example. But the report suggests that he is in discussions with both clubs, so there might be something in it. Who knows? By all accounts, he's been integral to Liverpool's transfer policy, but just how integral? I think that's an important question to ask, because we've seen since his departure, Julian Ward has been able to get some important transfers done. And of course, I think Jurgen Klopp as well, and his sort of coaching staff and everyone in the boardroom has a say in the transfers. So it hasn't all just been Michael Edwards as well. I think that's important to mention.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, to us sort of looking in from the outside, it's very hard to know who sort of gets the most, or should have the most credit for the sort of various deals and things that have been completed. But I guess as the sort of general overseer of the whole process, then, a lot of it rightly sort of falls with Edwards. I mean, there aren't many fans of many clubs who sort of joke about building a statue to their director of football or whatever. But I think Liverpool fans feel that way about Michael Edwards. As we say, I mean, there's so many people involved in the process, and I'm sure he'd say that himself. It's not a one-man operation by any means. All the transfer analysts and all the work they do scouting these players and finding the players that are going to suit and fit seamlessly into Liverpool's team and into Liverpool's system, But his been very important, even if it's just sort of overseeing the process. And obviously the sort of prices he gets for selling players is sort of just as important as the ones he brings in when Liverpool are competing against teams with bigger budgets. So as you said, Julian Ward appears to have started well as his successor. Not to say that was sort of automatically a given or that it was easy, but I think Liverpool, because of their work over the last few years, probably have a pretty slick process in place now, which is not to say anyone could do the job, of course, but clearly it's not building it up from scratch. He's coming in, Julian Ward coming into a very successful operation. Well, he was already part of it, but, taking over the sort of top job there. So, yeah, I mean, Edwards deserves tremendous credit as well, I suppose, for sort of setting that whole thing up and putting the things in place. I believe it was him that brought Ian Graham, the head of research, to the club and stuff like that, which has been, a very important move as well. So, yeah, he's sort of one of the kind of modern heroes of Liverpool, if that's not too sort of grand a statement to give to a sort of director of football character. But yeah, what he's achieved has been remarkable.
I mean, in that context, really, it would be interesting to see how much and control he would be able to have around these Chelsea and Manchester United. So perhaps his owners, well, we don't really know with Chelsea's new owners how they're going to act. But with Manchester United, we know they're not that open for change. They're not that open to sort of making radical changes in the staff room. We've seen, Ralph Rangnick recently struggle with that at United, and a few managers have not really been able to exact their ideas on the team. And obviously that would be a challenge if he was to take over.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's another big part of why everybody at Liverpool deserves a lot of credit, be that FSG and the owners or sort of Jurgen Klopp, because any football club can hire sort of, data analysts and guys like this, and most clubs do obviously now, but they don't all get listened to. And I think that's been a big part of the difference at Liverpool. I believe Manchester United hired a load of analysts and stuff like this, and there were stories, with them boasting, oh, we've got 8,000 scouting reports on right backs or whatever the figures were. And that's all well and good. That's great if you're trying to sort of use things like that to sort of improve your process. But if it doesn't get listened to at boardroom level, or it doesn't get listened to at sort of first team level with the manager and things like that, then it's not going to make any difference. And that's where Liverpool have done well. They've employed these guys, probably the smartest guys they have, but they've also listened to them and taken on board what they've wanted to do. And without that, they wouldn't have had the success they've had. So you're absolutely right. Michael Edwards probably make more money at Manchester United, for instance, but that doesn't mean by any stretch that it's a better job, because, as we've said, there's more to do. But also, is his input going to be taken seriously there, or at any club? I mean, I guess that's the risk for him now: is how seriously are the club he goes to? Are they going to sort of take his ideas and his processes on board? I mean, chances are they'll give it a try because of how well Liverpool have done. But at the same time, there's no guarantees. So it's another thing Liverpool have done well, certainly.
Of course, Liverpool players who Edwards has sold and have been famous, or infamous rather, for not really being able to kick it on or sort of continue the same form that they had at Liverpool, the likes of Wijnaldum, Coutinho, and etc. So it'll be interesting to see whether he follows that sort of mold of leaving Liverpool and not really being able to emulate his success elsewhere. But moving on from Edwards, another player who was confirmed to have left Liverpool officially. It seems strange to say it, but Sadio Mane is no longer a Liverpool player after 6 years. He's gone to Bayern Munich. What do you make of that deal now that it's finally all wrapped up? Did you watch his farewell interview, and did you notice anything from that or pick up on anything?
I haven't watched it all yet. I've seen a few clips from it that were on social media. I think it's one of those deals that sort of makes sense for everybody, but that doesn't mean that it's not still sort of quite a sad day for Liverpool and the fans, because, Mane's just been incredible. Perhaps he hasn't scored as many goals as Salah, for instance, but just his will to win, his determination. I mean, he scored so many fantastic goals, but for me, the goal he scored in injury time at Aston Villa in 2019, not the best goal he'll ever score, and in isolation, probably not the most important goal he'll ever score. But it was just that thing of, like, for the title challenge, it would have been disappointing to drop points there ahead of playing Man City the following week. And instead, we win the game through his goal, and then he scores again against Man City and we win that game. And obviously, I mean, we now know that they basically won every game until lockdown came along, more or less. But those sort of moments that aren't necessarily, the 40-goal seasons that Salah had, but to average 20 goals a season when you're not the main striker at the club for 5 of those 6 years, because obviously he was sort of second fiddle to Salah really for the last 5, to achieve all of that is incredible. And, people often talk about prices and things when players sign for clubs, but, a lot of people were saying Liverpool overpaid for him when he signed. And I think he was 35 million or something in that kind of, figure. And he's repaid that multiple times without question. And even though it's sad it's come to an end, nobody can be sad because of what he's sort of contributed to the club. Been fantastic. I think he's 14th all-time top scorer in the history of the club, something like that. So that certainly doesn't sound too bad for sort of 35 million in the modern sort of era.
No, absolutely not. And in terms of the final question, I think, which is probably the £1 million question, is do you think Darwin Nunez will be able to sort of replicate that 10 goal a season plus average that Mane was able to produce at Liverpool every year in, year out? I think most of the seasons, especially recently, it has been 15 plus at Liverpool for sure, especially in the Premier League. So it's a big ask of Nunez coming in at such a young age, but do you think he's someone who is ready for that challenge?
He definitely looks capable of it. I mean, obviously there are a lot of factors, as we say, like, you know, he's only really had one outstanding season in Portugal so far. The sort of data analysts that we were sort of praising earlier have no doubt done their sort of due diligence on him, and they're confident that his form can transfer to the Premier League. We've seen it sort of with Diaz already. He came in and sort of hit the ground running. But that level of consistency shouldn't be taken for granted. You know, I think I'm right in saying, you know, Mane's first season was his lowest scoring with Liverpool. And granted, they weren't as good a team as they are now. You know, Nunez will have that in his favour. But then obviously Mane was familiar with English football in the Premier League and things like that. So I think Nunez is certainly capable of getting, you know, similar sort of goal return every season. But that's not to say that it's to be taken for granted, because it won't have been easy for Mane, and it won't be easy for I think he's 22, young player coming into English football for the first time to just sort of casually rattle off 20 goals next season. But he looks like he's got the ability to, so we'll have to wait and see. But fingers crossed he can have a level of impact similar to Mane, and I think we'll all be happy in 6 years' time if he sort of matched that contribution.
Absolutely. I think he's only just 22 at the moment. I think he's turning 23 later this month, so only just. But you are right, Andrew, in saying he's 22. It's going to be a fascinating preseason watching him, seeing how he develops, how he fits into that Liverpool team. Thank you for joining me. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and of course there'll be plenty of content going out on Blood Red today and on Liverpool.com. So make sure to check out all of those. Thanks everyone.